The globally interconnected technology industry has become the new front line in the intensifying rivalry between the United States and China. With competition over next generation technologies like artificial intelligence and quantum computing heating up, a tech war is now unfolding between the two superpowers. This tech war centers around one tiny device that forms the backbone of the modern economy: the semiconductor chip. Semiconductor chips are in almost every electronic device, from laptop computers to coffee machines to video games. Both China and the US see the domination of these semiconductors as imperative. And in this video, I'm going to explain how the US are trying to prevent China's development and how China is fighting back. The start of the tech war dates back to rising trade tensions under the Trump administration. With the US imposing tariffs and restrictions on Chinese goods, China made achieving self-reliance in strategic technologies a top priority. This included massive investments to grow China's domestic semiconductor industry and close the gap with the US. However, US policymakers became increasingly alarmed about China's tech ambitions. They believed advanced semiconductors and supercomputers could turbocharge fields like hypersonics, encryption, and surveillance that could threaten America's military edge and economic leadership. The first major salvo of the semiconductor tech war targeted Chinese tech giant Huawei. In May 2019, the US Commerce Department added Huawei to its entity list, heavily restricting the company's access to American technology and products. But the broader implications would be even more severe. Huawei began stockpiling critical inventory before the ban took effect, and the US still allowed foreign firms to supply Huawei using overseas technology. So in May 2020, the Trump administration activated the Foreign Direct Product Rule. This subjected any semiconductor made with US tools or technology worldwide to the same restrictions. This expansive claim of extraterritorial authority allowed America to cut off Huawei's access to semiconductors globally. No non-US company could supply Huawei without a license. TSMC and other firms immediately halted orders. The success of the Huawei semiconductor sanctions opened the door to more expansive export controls. If Huawei could be hobbled, why not target China's entire advanced technology industry? In late 2020, the US began restricting export of semiconductor manufacturing equipment to China's leading chip maker, SMIC, citing unfounded military links. SMIC was cut off from tools needed to make cutting-edge chips. Next was drone manufacturer DJI, added to the entity list in December 2020. DJI lost access to vital American components and software. The pattern was clear. Advanced semiconductors and technology were being systematically denied. Dozens of Chinese supercomputing centers, research institutions, and tech firms were added to the block list. But while punitive, these firm-specific restrictions had limited impact on China's innovation capabilities. Sanctioned companies could be replaced by others not yet targeted. A broader industry-wide approach would be needed. The stage was set with the arrival of the Biden administration in January 2021. Biden officials saw strategic competition with China as a top priority. Control over semiconductors and advanced technology was critical to America's edge. An even more assertive and expansive export regime would be needed to stay ahead. Biden tapped national security veterans across key posts to formulate new policies. On October 7th, 2021, the Biden administration made its forceful move to constrain China's semiconductor ambitions. No longer limited to select companies, these restrictions applied economy-wide to encompass all Chinese firms and research institutions. This reflected a shift to an industry-wide offensive targeting China's broader strategic capabilities. The New York Times described the October 2021 export controls on China as the equivalent to an act of economic war, and emphasized the rules were unprecedented in their strategic intent to undermine China's advanced technology capabilities. Quoting experts, the Times noticed the export controls were taking aim at a target far broader than the Chinese security state, and threatened to eradicate China's ecosystem of advanced technology across the board. At the heart of the restrictions were new export controls on advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment. China relies heavily on imports of tools from the US, Netherlands, Japan and Taiwan to run its domestic chip fabrication facilities. The new rules severely limited the sale of equipment capable of producing chips more advanced than 14 nanometers. This would freeze China's chip fabrication several generations behind the cutting edge. Even more expansive was a new foreign direct product rule applied to chips. This dictated that any semiconductor using American tools or software required US approval to be shipped to China, even if produced outside the country. With the global supply chain tightly interwoven with US technology, this gave America authority over nearly all advanced chips shipped to China. The sweeping controls were a watershed, a direct strike against the foundation of China's future as a science and technology powerhouse. However, a key challenge facing the US was bringing critical allies on board with the sweeping export controls. America could not isolate China's semiconductor industry alone. The effort focused on Taiwan, Japan, the Netherlands and South Korea. As the dominant advanced chip producer, Taiwan was an absolutely essential partner. Its companies, especially TSMC, accounted for over 60% of semiconductor manufacturing worldwide. When the US imposed sweeping export controls, it insisted Taiwan implement parallel restrictions. TSMC complied, suspending advanced chip orders from Chinese customers. This severed China's largest source of leading-edge semiconductors, but it also forced TSMC to forego a massive Chinese market, risking long-term decline. The Netherlands was a harder sell. Its lithography firm, ASML, held a monopoly on the ultraviolet laser systems needed to produce advanced chips. The Dutch were wary of getting dragged into a US-China conflict, but after extensive pressure, the Netherlands agreed to review semiconductor exports to China, and in November 2022, the Dutch adopted new controls on the export of chip machines to China. Japan was another semiconductor powerhouse the US targeted. It took longer to convince, worrying about a blowback on its economy. But in December 2022, Japan restricted photoresist exports critical to chip making and joined the US-led controls. South Korea still refuses to join, fearing retaliation given its proximity to China. But new US legislation threatens to cut off South Korea chip firms like Samsung from US technology if they sell advanced semiconductors to China. This coercion reflects US determination to enlist allies by any means necessary. With the top three equipment suppliers aligned, China's access to the tools needed for advanced semiconductor production was now severely limited. The global supply chain blockade had taken shape, and the US had to some extent achieved its goal. China has been investing heavily in its semiconductor industry in recent years, and it is now the world's largest producer of semiconductors by volume. China is also developing its own chip design capabilities, and it is now self-sufficient in producing chips for many applications. Faced with expansive new barriers to obtaining advanced semiconductors, China has undertaken a massive effort to circumvent the export controls and build domestic capabilities. The US restrictions sparked a surge in spending, production and technological workarounds. China is also doubling down on R&D and acquiring talent. Multi-billion-dollar investments into research programs aimed to master key technologies like advanced lithography and chip design software. In 2021, China invested $100 billion on semiconductor industry R&D. A key focus is developing its own semiconductor manufacturing. The government aims to produce 70% of domestic chip demand internally by 2025. This will reduce reliance on foreign supply chains. New semiconductor megafabs are under construction across China. The country will add an estimated 26 new advanced fabs by 2026. Another key prong of China's response is developing indigenous alternatives to the advanced manufacturing equipment it is now denied access to. Major investments are funding breakthroughs in homegrown semiconductor tools. Chinese firms like Nora and Advanced Microfabrication Equipment Inc. are making rapid progress on lithography, etching machines and other fabrication gear. While still reliant on foreign components, fully domestic toolsets are the ultimate goal. In fact, Huawei recently announced that they are in the final stages of testing homegrown tools for the 14nm node of semiconductor. China is also aggressively expanding production of memory chips and older node logic chips using available domestic equipment. The country now manufactures over 15% of DRAM memory chips worldwide, up from negligible levels just 5 years ago. Chinese firms aim to supply 70% of domestic DRAM demand by 2025. For 28nm chips critical for a majority of electronics, Chinese production has grown from 15,000 wafers per month in 2019 to 70,000 today. The goal is 200,000 wafers monthly by 2025. This concentration on mature node chips is strategic. The vast majority of chips found in everything from washing machines to cars and even missiles use older 28nm process and above. The sub 10nm chips banned by the US account for only 10 to 15% of global semiconductor sales. With China's high volume, low-cost manufacturing capabilities, China will be able to produce and sell these legacy chips at significantly lower prices than Western manufacturers. According to Counterpoint Research, legacy node semiconductors accounted for 26% of TSMC's production and accounted for 25% of their profit in 2021. A recent article in Bloomberg states that the US and Europe are growing alarmed by China's rush into legacy chips. It seems as though this is just one of a number of unintended consequences of the USA's sanctions on China. More remarkably, China is also making advances in domestic 7nm chip production. SMIC and Shanghai IC R&D Center have announced successes on 7nm chip fabrication. Although the yields are lower than would be ideal, this shows China's pipelines are not yet totally cut off from advanced nodes as intended by the US. China is also aggressively pursuing chiplet technology as a key enabler for domestic progress. Chiplets allow complex computing power to be achieved through packaging together many discrete modular chips using advanced packaging methods. For China, chiplets are an attractive workaround as lower level chips can be produced domestically. By combining and stacking enough mature chiplet components, Chinese firms hope to approximate the capabilities of a single advanced chip. Some breakthroughs have occurred already. The startup Barrett says its chiplet technology enabled China's most powerful AI training chip yet, circumventing US constraints. To scale up chiplet adoption, China is funding new research institutes dedicated to advanced packaging methods. It aims to master key techniques like die-to-die bonding that enable dense chiplet integration. China tech giants like Alibaba and Huawei are pouring resources into internal chiplet projects, aiming to secure future access to powerful architectures even if chip bans persist. However, chiplets are no magic bullet. Without continued progress on foundational technologies like photolithography, chiplet advantages have limits. But chiplet innovation helps China climb the chip capability ladder and erodes the containment effects of US sanctions. For now, it offers a lifeline to sustain China's semiconductor ambitions. The United States has become more reliant on foreign countries for semiconductors. The percentage of semiconductors that the United States produces domestically has been declining in recent years. In 2021, the United States produced an estimated 12% of global semiconductors. This is down from 37% in 1990. the United States government is now trying to address the decline in the semiconductor industry. Under the CHIPS Act, the Biden administration has proposed a $52 billion investment into the semiconductor industry in the hope of bringing more semiconductor production back to the US. However, this plan is facing numerous challenges. It's also worth noting that $52 billion is not a huge amount of money in the semiconductor industry. A number of experts have already said that the US government will need to spend significantly more in order for their plan to be feasible. One of the key announcements around the policy was attracting Taiwan's TSMC to build a multi-billion-dollar semiconductor fabrication facility in Arizona. However, this has faced a number of challenges. Firstly, a major complication has been finding qualified construction workers in the Phoenix area. TSMC chairman Mark Liu admitted the company underestimated the ready local supply of specialized personnel needed to build the highly complex facility. Hence, completion of the shell will now be pushed back 6 to 9 months. Additionally, TSMC is also grappling with an ongoing shortage of experienced chip engineers to actually operate the fab. The company plans to send several hundred engineers from Taiwan to provide training, further delaying production till late 2025. Rising costs are another major headache and mean that TSMC will need to charge customers higher prices, up to 30% more, for chips from the new fab. Obviously, this has not gone down well with TSMC's customers. The restrictions have also had a negative impact on the US economy. The semiconductor industry is a major driver of economic growth, and the restrictions have slowed down the growth of the industry. They have also led to job losses. The decline in sales to China is likely to lead to a decline in profits for US semiconductor companies. This is because China is by far the largest market for semiconductors, accounting for 37% in 2021, which is also likely to lead to a decline in R&D spending by US semiconductor companies, because R&D is a long-term investment and companies are less likely to invest in R&D if they are not seeing a return on their investment. The industry is also facing a number of other challenges, including the rising cost of manufacturing, the shortage of skilled workers, and the competition from China. The industry is trying to address these challenges, but it is unclear how successful they will be. On July the 17th, 2023, executives from the major US semiconductor producers met with top Biden administration officials to discuss the ongoing chip shortage and the potential impact of the US-China trade war on the industry. Present at the meeting were CEOs from Intel, AMD, Nvidia, Micron Technology, and Global Foundries. They told the Biden administration that the chip shortage is having a significant impact on their business and is causing major disruptions to the global economy. They also expressed concerns about the potential impact of the US-China trade war on the industry, particularly the potential for China to retaliate against US companies. In a recent interview with the Financial Times, Jensen Huang, CEO of Nvidia, said he sees the potential for economic damage to US companies if the chip war with China escalates. He then went on to say, "If we are deprived of the Chinese market, we don't have a contingency for that. There is no other China, there is only one China." Comments like this from the CEO of one of the world's largest chip producers just shows how concerned these companies are with the current US administration's policy. The intensifying technology standoff between the US and China has reached a critical inflection point. For the US, priorities include denying China access to leading-edge semiconductor manufacturing and tooling for as long as possible. Meanwhile, America aims to rebuild domestic production through subsidies and incentives. Reshoring advanced fabs would reduce future vulnerabilities. Government assistance to firms like Intel is surging under initiatives like the CHIPS Act. For China, the overriding goal is self-sufficiency. To get there, domestic industry must be cultivated through subsidies, research and development funding, and technology acquisition. A virtuous cycle of improved capabilities can reduce foreign reliance over time. The outcome of the semiconductor tech war remains in flux. China's progress has inevitably slowed in areas like supercomputing without leading-edge chips, but a long-term spirit towards self-reliance in critical technologies is underway. With national power and prestige at stake, neither side can easily back down. The key question is whether an equilibrium can be struck. Managing US-China competition while avoiding outright conflict may be the foremost foreign policy challenge of this coming era. I hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please consider hitting the thumbs up. If you like the channel in general, please consider hitting that subscribe button. But as always, for now, take care.